FM.
From the KCAA Weather Center, I'm Rod Williams for tonight. A slight chance of sprinkles after 11, a low of 55. Sprinkles in the morning on Thursday with a high of 75, an overnight low of 56 degrees. I'm Rod Williams, broadcasting live from the Tri-City Center at the 10 and 210 freeways. We are the trifecta of talk in Southern California. KCAA 102.3 FM Riverside, 106.5 FM Redlands, and The Legacy, 1050 AM Loma Linda and San Bernardino.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. At least 6 deaths are being blamed on Hurricane Michael. 4 of those casualties were confirmed in Florida's Gadsden County, not far from where the Category 4 storm made landfall. Meanwhile, officials in North Carolina and Georgia each confirmed a death in their states. Florida Governor Rick Scott is getting a first-hand look at some of the damage from Michael. He said the worst damage he saw was in Mexico Beach. In Chipley and Bristol, he said there were random spots of destruction where it looked like tornadoes had hit. Scott said a lot of people are helping in rescue efforts.
So we have over 1,000 people doing search and rescue. We have, I think it's 1,800 people that have offered and to be deployed law enforcement.
Rapper Kanye West is staying true to form during his visit to the White House. West unleashed a tirade about a host of issues during his meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office and dropped a few obscenities along the way. He praised President Trump as being among a group of no BS people who inspired him. The widow of a murdered New York City police officer is speaking out as her husband's killer goes up for parole tomorrow.
In April of this year, convicted cop killer Herman Bell was released on parole, allowed to live in Brooklyn under supervision. He, along with Albert Washington and Anthony Bottom, ambushed and shot dead 2 New York City police officers in 1971. Officers Waverly Jones and Anthony Piagentini, who asked to be spared so he could raise his young children. He was then riddled with bullets and killed. The 3 Black Liberation Army members sent to prison where Washington died. Now Bottom has his chance before the parole board, but not before Piagentini's widow, Diane, has her chance to make a victim impact statement. James Flippin, NBC News Radio, New York.
Wall Street is seeing another day of huge losses. At the closing bell, the Dow fell 546 points to 25,052 and lost more than 1,300 points in the last 2 days alone. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Visit your local Baker's drive-thru restaurant this month and get an Easter Seals Safe Halloween booklet for just $1. You'll receive over $400 in coupons and make a life-changing difference in the lives of kids and adults with disabilities in the Inland Empire. 100% of the proceeds support Easter Seals services in your community. No trick. Learn more at easterseals.com/Southern Cal.
Hi, folks. If you're still paying for electricity every month, it means you haven't signed up for the Inland Empire's #1 money savings program offered by Horizon Solar Power. Just call to qualify your home, and Horizon will give you $100 plus pay your electric bill until 2020. It's that simple. Call, qualify, get $100 and no electric bill payments until 2020. So keep your money in your pocket and become energy independent today. Call 844-711-6996. That's 844-711-6996. Or click on one of our Stay Cool ads at KCAAradio.com.
This election, the voters in the 42nd Assembly District have an amazing chance to finally be represented in Sacramento by someone who listens and cares.
I'm Denny Antoinette Mazingo. Vote for me November 6th.
Denny will reach across the aisle to work with the majority in Sacramento and give voters the voice they've been waiting for and need.
I will advocate and fight for universal health care, a path from college to career free of debt, a healthy business environment with abundant well-paying jobs, affordable housing for all, safe schools and communities, a transition program for 18-year-old foster care children. Seniors have to choose monthly on what life necessities they can afford, and we're going to change that.
Denny's a former military lawyer, a JAG. She will fight for you in Sacramento. Google Denny, D-E-N-I.
I'm Denny Antoinette Mazingo. I approve this message.
Paid for by friends of Denny Antoinette Mazingo.
It's time to shop in the cool, relaxed comfort of the Tri-City Shopping Center in Redlands, conveniently located on the I-10 freeway between the Alabama and Tennessee exits. Bring the kids too and watch them play in the only indoor fun center. High Five Indoor Playground, where parents are welcomed on the playground. Birthday celebrations are encouraged, so make plans for some great fun at the mall. More reasons why the Tri-City Center is called the Mall with a Heart.
This is KCAA.
Live from the NBC News Radio broadcasting studios of KCAA 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM, located in beautiful sunny California. Thanks for tuning into the Water Zone Show this afternoon. I'm Rob Starr along with Mr. Chris Davies, and we are the Water Boys, and we're having a good time, and we're watching our engineer rock out in the studio there. I think he likes the music.
Good evening, Rob. How are you tonight? You can see him in there bouncing his head. I mean, you know, the intro music lasted a long time.
Yeah, it did. In fact, I have to talk to him about last week's show. It's okay. No, it was good. We had a great time in Las Vegas.
We did.
And that was an excellent show. And we talked about the award that we got from the EPA, so we're very happy about that. And then yesterday I went to the Landscape Expo, and that was pretty...
In Long Beach?
Yes, that was great. And then we got the... IA show coming up. A couple of events on Saturday. We're going to be at the Arcadia County Park for the Upper San Gabriel Valley Water District. They're having a water fest. So anybody who lives in that area, please come by and say hi to us. We'd appreciate that. And then the weekend after, you're going to be doing Chino Basin.
Basin Water District,
right, Conservation Water District.
Yeah.
Right, they all have these long names.
Yes.
And I'm going to be up with Mojave Desert in Barstow.
Beautiful Barstow.
Beautiful Barstow. So I'll be doing that. Anyway, we got a great show tonight. Got a recording of a lady named Sue Mossberg that we did at the AWWA training session. But I want to bring on our most famous person. She makes the show perfect, and she's the news person's news in water, Miss Chris Austin.
How you doing, guys?
We're doing great, Chris. We missed you.
Yeah.
And how can you not have a great time in Las Vegas? I mean, is there no better place to be than Las Vegas if you're looking for a good time? At least that's the way I think of it. I haven't been there in a long time, but when I always go, I always have a great time in Las Vegas.
Rest assured, it's still there.
Yeah. They didn't arrest us for trashing the rooms or any of the wild parties that we had. So.
Oh, so you were calmer than usual then, right?
Yeah, we were.
Yeah.
Yes, we were.
No, we took.
Well, you know, those irrigation guys.
I know. Well, we passed on the gambling, but we did our share of good eating.
Well, yeah, there's great food there.
Absolutely.
And I grew up in Reno, so I'll tell you, like they don't build those massive palaces to gambling because they give away money. I'll just say.
No, you're right. So tell us what's going on this week. There must be a whole bunch of good stuff going on.
Yeah, what's the big news?
Well, I guess the biggest news is that, they have some agreement between the 7 states, although Arizona's a bit in question, as to what to do on the Colorado River. The basic problem is that the water levels in Lake Mead have dropped.
It's like 30-something%, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's only at about 42% full, I think. I'm not quite entirely sure, but put it this way, it's low.
Yep.
And once it gets to a certain point of lowness, then they're not going to be able to draw water out of it anymore, and Hoover Dam will not be able to produce power. Yeah. It just drops too low. You can't run the hydropower, and that's a major power supply for Southwest and for Metropolitan. It's actually, I believe, the power that runs the Colorado River Aqueduct pumping station.
That's where they need the water train to bring the water in.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry, I always joke about that.
You keep talking
they've come up with another idea. The 7 states have gotten together and they've come up with a plan that involves, for the lower basin states, it involves leaving water in Lake Mead, passing on a portion of the water. And so they've come to an agreement, and California, or And you know, really, when we talk about the Colorado River and we say California, what we really mean is mostly the Imperial Valley, but also Metropolitan Water District, and to a very small extent, Coachella Valley and Palo Verde. But they're very small users. The lion's share of Colorado River water that comes into California goes to the Imperial Valley. In fact, 1/5 of the average flow of the Colorado River goes to the Imperial Valley. That is a larger share than any other state on the Colorado River. And the reason why that happened is because Imperial Valley they got there first. The Imperial Valley was developed for agriculture like in 1900. And actually, there's a lot of fabulous stories. I could go on forever. The Pacific Fruit Express started by shipping cantaloupe out of the Imperial Valley. I mean, there's lots of great stories there, and how the Salton Sea came into existence. But bottom line, getting back on topic, you know, they got there first, so they have over 3 million acre-feet, or 1/5 of the Colorado River flow comes to them, which they use extensively for farming, obviously.
Right.
So they've come to an agreement, and Arizona has been sort of waffling on this, but they're kind of working to get things together. Brenda Berman, the commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation, went out on a series of talks and said, "Look, you know, this does not look good for the Colorado River, and you best plan for it now before you get into shortage situation." So Arizona is a little bit less on board than the other 6 states, but they've gone public, and they're trying to get everything ratified. And it basically involves every state leaving some water in the river, and it's not really water loss technically, because the entities that leave the water it would be leaving it in Lake Mead and not having it delivered to them. And all those entities still technically would get that water back if things improve. And that's really kind of the big if, because there's been a drought on the Colorado River for, I think they're looking at 19 years. I mean, it's been quite a long time.
On and off, yeah.
Yeah, so that water they may never get it back. I'm sorry?
No, Chris, I was going to say, I read this week El Nino conditions, all the factors pointing towards a increasingly likely El Nino this winter.
Yeah, but you know, the thing about El Nino is it can mean great precipitation for Southern California and the Southwest, or not. And they've done scatter plots that really show that, you know, it's really a crapshoot. There's no tendency one way or the other. We just tend to think about El Nino as being this big harbinger of huge precipitation, because when it has come, the big precipitation has usually been in an El Nino year. But that is somewhat, you know, true, that if it's big precipitation, it's an El Nino year. But the converse of that is not true. It's not true that an El Nino year means big precipitation. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty much a crapshoot. So we'll see. We're all going to hope for adequate and abundant precipitation that does not flood or damage anybody. So no mudslides, no flooded homes. But just up into that point, right?
Right. Well, given Gavin Newsom now says he will scale back the twin tunnels if elected.
Well, yeah, that's what he's saying, that he's in favor of the one-tunnel option, although I do not see how the governor has a way into this debate at this point, because there's really it's all a matter of permitting now. And interestingly enough, the State Water Board hearings on the Cal Water Fix project actually concluded, all the testimony concluded October 1st. Interesting. Nobody's talking about this. So that means that there's a few rulings come out from the State Water Board, and then it's decision time. And the State Water Board has two major decisions before them right now at this point in time. The Cal Water Fix and what to do about the San Joaquin River flows. So all eyes to the State Water Board these days. Who knows when we'll hear. They're supposed to decide on the San Joaquin River flows on November 7th, and there's no timeline been released on from the State Water Board on when they would decide on the Cal Water Fix permit that they're looking for.
If you were a betting girl, would it be this year or not?
Oh, I think if I'm a betting girl, I'm going to say they're going to do this year because they're trying to get it approved before Jerry Brown leaves office. But there's awful lot of moving parts, and I don't know if they'll actually get everything approved. But I think that the State Water Board is going to hand down some sort of decision on both of these items before the end of the year. Right. That's my guess. I could be wrong, but I think that that's where they're going. They want to get things wrapped up before the new administration comes in, because who knows what's going to happen.
All right. Well, Chris, that's good prognostication right there. Unfortunately, we got a little shortened news briefing from the Maven tonight because we got a guest that's queued up and ready to go. But love talking to you this week, and we'll do it again soon.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Take a little break for a commercial and we'll be right back.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292FQ Riverside, and K293CF Moreno Valley.
If you knew there was a pipe cement that works better than the one you're currently using, is better for you and the environment, and costs the same or less, would you buy it? Oh, no-brainer, right? Weldon, the trusted leader in solvent cements for over 60 years, is pleased to introduce a new line of solvent cements that does all that. Introducing the Eco Series line of solvent cements for PVC piping systems. Not only does it work great and set fast, it also has 30% lower solvent emissions and less smelly fumes, a better workplace environment when you're installing pipes. But don't just take our word for it. Eco Series products are the only solvent cements that are Green Seal certified for environmental innovation for effective performance, improved working conditions, and for use with potable water. Now available in a medium-bodied fat-setting blue formula, 905 Eco, and a regular-bodied fat-setting clear formula, 900 Eco. Pick up a can today from your local distributor and see, smell, and feel the difference, just like Joe Sweat, president of Sunrise Irrigation, did. He said, after using Weldon's 905 Eco, we immediately noticed the application was smooth and there was noticeably less odor than other blue solvent cements on the market. The guys love it. To learn more about Eco Solvent Cements from Weldon, visit the website at www.weldon.com or call the Technical Service Hotline at 877-477-8327. That's 877-477-8327.
Time to take a water break and talk some water. Irrigation. Such a refreshing topic. As more and more markets face water restrictions, your customers may be hungry, or should I say thirsty, for water-saving products. For new installations, add options like drip irrigation, controllers that respond to weather data, pressure-regulating heads, or heads with check valves. They all provide easy ways to differentiate your bids and win more jobs. Or for an extra stream of revenue, offer existing customers upgrades like high-efficiency nozzles, rotary nozzles, or Wi-Fi based controllers. Because when you help your customers save water, you make a world of difference for the earth and your bottom line at the same time. We'll drink to that.
We're here at the Water Education Seminar in Santiago Canyon College for the American Water Works Association for California and Nevada section. And for our first guest, we have Ms. Sue Mossberg. She's the Water Loss Mitigation Lead Spokesperson for the California and Nevada AWWA Water Efficiency Expert. Ms. Mossberg is a program manager at Sweetwater Authority with responsibility for the authority's water use efficiency, employee development, and risk management programs. She serves as an American Waterworks Association director, representing the California and Nevada section. She chairs the California Water Loss Control Collaborative and leads in the efforts of the California and Nevada AWWA section in administering the Water Loss Control Technical Assistance Program and developing the Water Audit Validator Certificate Program. I'll fix that. Sue holds a BS in Business Management, a AA in Speech Communication, so she has good articulation. She is a certified water use efficiency practitioner and a water audit validator. And welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And I'll learn to do better articulation. I wasn't doing my radio voice. Ladies and gentlemen, guys and gals. Anyway, try to make you comfortable here. So how did you get into this business? I mean, you got a great title and you do lots of important things, but how did you start? And then we'll talk about what you do.
You know, I actually, in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had been a Future Farmer of America leader for most of my high school career. And I was headed off at that time when people said, where are you going to go to college? I was going to go to Fresno State, be a farmer, get an ag business management major, and needed a summer job. So I went to work, turned in an application with the city of San Diego in their water department. There was this little announcement on the job board at school that said Lake Aid. I had no clue what it was, but it wasn't flipping burgers. Oh. And I thought I can do that. Happened to get an interview, happened to get a job, probably because of my Future Farmer experiences and working on a ranch and a farm. And it was awesome. I get up early in the mornings, out on the lake, talk to fishermen, kind of a jack of all trades. And when the summer was over, I had fallen in love. And a little notice from Fresno State that said there was an error on getting me a room in the dorm. And I went, golly gosh, I can't go off to school. I need to stay in San Diego County and continue working at the lake. And ended up getting married and spent 18 years at the city of San Diego in the water department. Wow. The first 9 being like a lake ranger, helping people with fishing programs and duck hunting and repairing facilities, and in that really got to love water. I've had a lot of opportunities over the years to get out of water and just, I think that there's always that one moment where your life switches and goes in a new direction. Right. And I went from being a farmer to being a water wonk.
And you love it.
And I love it. I absolutely love it. After about 8-9 years out at the lakes, started a family and decided that working weekends and evenings and holidays when the lake was open wasn't probably conducive to raising a family. Right. So moved into a safety and training program at the city of San Diego. And really that's been my lifeblood for my career then.
Well, San Diego is really, really big on water efficiency.
Yes, it is.
We did a project with Mayor Falconer for the Wyland Foundation, the National Mayor's Challenge for Water, which we're a sponsor. My company's a sponsor for that. And we worked with another gentleman in San Diego named Carlos Michelin. I don't know if you know Carlos.
I know Carlos.
Carlos is, in fact, I wrote him the recommendation for the job. I met him when he was at Metropolitan Water District, so I go back with him a long time. He's a good friend of mine. Good man. So now that you're at Sweetwater, what do you do as far as what you call water use efficiency, risk management programs? Where does that go? What does that mean?
Right. So when I left the city of San Diego to get the job at Sweetwater Authority, I went there as their technical skills trainer. So I was responsible for making sure that the workers, of which there's about 130 at Sweetwater Authority, that they had the technical knowledge, skills, abilities, the soft skills they needed to do their jobs. Having worked with the safety and training program at the city of San Diego, I brought with me the occupational safety and health piece. I had also been teaching technical classes like how to run a backhoe or how to put valves together. I'll honestly say I'm a jack of all trades. I can take technical information and move that down to a level that's understandable and is actually interesting. And so I went to Sweetwater as a technical trainer, and because of the experiences and the information that I had with me from the city of San Diego, I kept getting additional hats. So expanded from simply producing the training and getting the subject matter experts together to provide the training, to running then the safety program and being the risk manager. So when we have, whether it's the car hitting another car and we have a claim associated with that, or whether it's part of the infrastructure breaking, like a main break and flooding at a house, right. I get involved with that. And still am able to teach the employees, still am able to teach people about water.
So when people want to get into that kind of work, is there a place that they have to go train first, or do they get a job with the water agency and then the water agency sends them for training? How does those two things come together?
It's interesting in water industry, there's not one way to get in, and there's not one way to learn about it. Most people drop into this industry. They don't grow up thinking, I want to be a water worker. Instead, they maybe have a family friend or a neighbor who encourages them to consider a job in that arena. And then they're either going to go to a community college or the professional associations like AWWA and others to learn the technical pieces. Sometimes they'll come in with a certificate in water treatment or distribution or water efficiency or irrigation for that matter. And then once they're with an agency, expand their knowledge and get additional certifications.
Does the agencies encourage that? Do they
support it?
Do they sponsor it? Do they pay for the? Is there a reimbursement back for getting more education?
There is. This is an industry that's constantly expecting the employees to learn and grow. So this is an industry that very much is supportive of tuition reimbursement programs, of encouraging the work space to bring in 1 and 2 day classes, send people to seminars, such as what we've got going on here, a 1 day intensive technical training. But it also is one where the supervisors and folks who have been there a while are literally in the field training the next round of folks.
Is there a shortage of people?
There is. What we're finding is that because this has been kind of a quiet, silent industry, folks don't know that there's jobs here. Mm-hmm. And so as an industry, we're having to reach into the community colleges to offer these technical classes. There's starting to be programs associated with the STEM program, mm-hmm. Where they're reaching into the high schools and even down into the middle schools to at least let the kids know that these jobs exist. And right now, the biggest challenge or hurdle is all of the information technology. It's the Internet of Things, mm-hmm. It's the electrical and devices to operate and manage these systems. If you think of a water system, historically it was pipes and valves that were manually controlled. And now a lot of the system is those same pipes and valves, but now they're controlled through programmable logic controllers, or they're tied into electronic systems.
Intelligent decisions are only made by intelligent information. And so it's important when you have ultrasonic flow sensors and things to manage that. Also, the purity of water and how that's treated and all of that. So it's more than just the hands-on, heavy putting pipes together and doing that. Now you need to know about the systems and computers and all that. I mean, so it's not just one particular job. It's a whole opening of all kinds of things for people.
It is. And what really changed our industry in many ways was when professional certification of the system operators was required. So back in the 70s, water treatment plant operators and wastewater treatment plant operators were required by the state to be certified and to have a certain body of knowledge and experiences that showed that they could operate a facility. Pushing clean, drinkable, potable water out, and then taking what the community had used and making it so that it was clean again for the environment or reuse. That shifted the knowledge, skills, and abilities of those plant operators back in the 70s. In a similar way, we saw that shift in the 90s when distribution operators, those that work on the pipelines, started to be required to be certified. And so where before you could get somebody who just could run a shovel, as long as somebody told him how to run that shovel, he was fine. Right. Now you have people who not only need to run the shovel, but also need to know how to hook up the electronics that operates the valve that they're installing, or how to operate the backhoe that's no longer simply manually controlled, but has many of the devices on the control system that help with leveling or size or whatnot. So it's a different understanding, and we actually had a whole lot of people take an exodus from this industry in the early 2000s because they simply didn't want to go back to school. So we saw a huge shift in the knowledge level that was required. And that's part of this connection now with the STEM programs and getting people at the colleges and at the high schools to understand when you come to work in the water industry, you're not coming to dig a ditch anymore. You're coming to get a highly skilled operator who understands technology, who understands computers, who understands when they're looking at a computer screen and seeing what the pressures and the flows are, adjusting that for fire and demand. It's a whole another skill level.
I think, and I truly believe the general public has no idea of what goes on behind the scenes with the water with the water agency. You know, in my world of irrigation, there's companies like Irrigation Tech, Irrigator Tech, that goes out and trains people and certifies. So in your world, once you get a certificate, is that good forever, or do you have to keep revalidating it?
Right, so it's not good forever. Many of the certifications in the water industry are on a 3-year renewal cycle. So those who work at a water treatment plant, there's 5 levels of certification. The first 2 levels you can get without stepping foot into a formal classroom if you wanted to. You still have to complete a class for level 2, but you can do that online if you wanted. When you get to level 3, 4, and 5, you do have to have formal education, and most of that is only available in classrooms, as well as experience in the plant. Once you reach that level, that certificate's good for 3 years. Same on the distribution side. You can get the lowest level without, just take your test. But as you grow up into the levels up through 5, you have to have the classroom as well as your experience. And then the certificate's only good for 3 years. And the reason for that is really this ongoing change in the industry. There was recognition when these certifications were put into place that just getting trained at one point in time wouldn't hold you for a 20, 30, 40-year
That's like a doctor.
career.
There's new technologies that
Yes.
are coming, new methods and new drugs.
New technologies, new methods, and so there's ongoing educational requirements that are required that you fulfill so many hours of education before you renew, and then those renewals are 3 years.
Now, as they get higher up to the level 4 and the level 5, and say they start off in high school, or they just, how much more education, aside from the water piece of that, I mean, do they have to be proficient in math? Do they have to be, well, do they have to know differential calculus? Do they have to know differential thermal analysis? I mean,
Yeah, in the water industry, historically, math has been the stumbling block. So for those who are operating the systems and really the first and second line of field work, math is a heavy requirement. And so often the training programs that prepare people for certification or keep their renewals current have a heavy focus on math, because when you're dosing chemicals, when you're calculating linear feet of main that you need to, water main you need to put in.
You don't want to hear, oops.
Yeah, you don't want to hear, oops, or, well, gosh, I just put in chemical until it, smelled right. That really is math heavy, and there's classes that are applied math for that reason. So it's not just knowing how to do the formula, it's how do you apply the information into the formula to get the correct answer. Right. So math is heavy, but then beyond that, what we're finding now is that really the industry is engineering driven because of the capital investment projects that are being done and the manipulation of the system over time. Even how do you dig out a water main that's not in the street all by itself, but now it's in the street, and there's telephone cables, and there's internet cables, and there's sewer lines, and there's electrical lines.
And plus, you need to know what when you start doing that, what effect on pressure it has upstream and downstream.
Downstream, and so the engineering in this industry is heavy. Many of the leaders in the industry have engineering degrees. That's very, very common. But those if I could circle around to our prior conversation, those are things that oftentimes the industry will support somebody getting their advanced schooling. So
that's great.
Just as I came in without a degree, my agencies paid for my degrees. That's very common for those who want to move on and become engineers.
That's pretty cool. Going back to a couple years ago, and I'm not picking on LADWP, but just as an example, when they went to, when they were in the drought, well, back in that time, and they're trying to reduce water, and they don't want people to water their lawns and things, so we're going to stagger what days you can water. Now that put a big pressure problem onto the pipes and caused them to burst. I would have thought they had engineers technically enough to do that. Well, how did something like that, and again, I'm not trying to pick on LADWP, I have a lot of friends that work there, and they're a good customer of ours as well. So how does things like that happen? I know that's an oops, but how would you say, why would that have occurred?
I don't want to say why somebody did what they did, but what I'll say is in the water industry, we're working with systems. And so it's just like your body is a system. If you want to, for example, get muscle mass, you're gonna do a few things.
No donuts.
No donuts or very few donuts. You're gonna work out. You're gonna eat certain nutritional things. And each time you change something, be it your diet or your workout pattern, that's gonna affect other things. Mm-hmm. So if we walk down this path for just a second, if I want to gain muscle mass and I haven't gone to the doctor and checked my heart, and I'm an older individual, I may go out and work out with the youngsters and have a heart attack.
A lot of stress, right?
I've put stress on my system that was different than what my original goal was. I didn't think about that. I was maybe focused on something different. And that's the same thing that happens in the water industry. When we go into these periods of drought, like what we just came through, the whole system is stressed in different ways than before. Systems were designed for fire flow capacity and the ability to massively produce water in a short burst if you need for fires, as well as have a constant smaller flow for normal day-to-day use in the community. When we go into drought and we're telling people don't use as much water, now we have to change the capacities that are in those storage tanks, and we have to think about what the water quality in those storage tanks is and cycle them differently. That affects the timing of when we're filling or emptying a tank, maybe seasonally as well as during a week or even hours of the day. You add to that then that people are being told to use their water differently, like LADWP did with the different days of the week. Balancing that becomes an interesting challenge because you're trying to balance, do you do it odd and even addresses, in which case the pipe going down a road is still being hit kind of evenly. That seems to make sense, but what if there's a big school at one of those addresses? Or what if there's several addresses that are vacant for a multifamily housing unit? So those sorts of things, you try and think of it all, but you can't. It's kind of like that older person who went out and exercised, maybe didn't think about their heart.
So like the doctor with the heart thing, LADWP just said, hey, the system had a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and that's the way it is, and it's done. Nobody would understand what that means, and the press would have went away, and that would be done with it. But they didn't. But they didn't.
And the reality is, we still need to take care of the heart.
Right.
And what we're finding, for example, is with the drought, there's a lot of different effects. So on the wastewater side of things, the wastewater industry is starting to have some real concerns when we're in a drought because they're not getting the flows of sewer through. And those flows are what move the larger materials down on into the wastewater treatment plant. Right. And even the flows into the wastewater treatment plant are different because it's more solids, maybe not as much liquids, because people aren't flushing their toilets as frequently and using the volumes of water into the sewer. So it truly is a system, and I think as much as we in the industry try to think ahead strategically on what might break or where the challenges might be, and plan appropriately, we really don't know until we get into it what that effect is, and then learning from that for the next time around.
Do you think the low flush toilet industry is going to have a serious effect on the pipes, given with pressure and things, because it's not, you don't have that real pump?
I don't, and only because we've been doing low flow and ultra low flow and extremely high efficiency toilets now for several decades.
Right.
And the exchange factor is, although it's been fast-tracked because of rebates and direct install programs of changing old technology out, there are a whole lot of toilets. And it's kind of like even the washing machines. There's a whole lot of washing machines, and those devices last a long, long time.
Yep.
So when we hit the drought of the 70s and even the 80s and 90s, and we were really in California transitioning from the 7.5 gallon per toilet flushers down to the 3 or the 1 gallon, 1.7 gallon flushers. That was a slow transition. Everybody didn't go out and buy a new toilet because some people had toilets that still worked. Right. Washing machines, the same way in the 80s through the 90s, even the 2000s. People transitioned those units slowly because they didn't need a new one, right, or they weren't propelled by that rebate to make that purchase. And so because of that slower shift of the technologies, the industry was able, and the water systems were able to accommodate and flex to those reduced needs. What hurt us more recently, in some ways, was the state requirements to reduce consumption by 20%.
Right.
And then 25%.
Well, even though most of the water, I have to give credit now to all the water agencies in California, the majority, 99% of them, they all did a great job in educating their people, their customers. And cities like Riverside and others exceeded that. And then when they were told, hey, you got to do more, and they said, well, we have water. We don't need you to tell us. We got tons of underground water, like Cadiz water and others, where they got abundance of stuff. It just made me feel kind of funny that you can save money the first year or two. You reduce it. But then they want you to squeeze more and more. There was a study done and presented at the Irrigation Association 2 years ago, talking about the rebate for the cash for grass. Everybody thought that was a wonderful idea. Now, there's pros and cons about turf grass versus non-turf grass. Turf grass does a lot of good benefits for the air, for pollution, for retaining water and stuff like that. The artificial turf is much hotter. It captures and keeps more water, which means it'll do contamination of mold and mildew. There's even reports now cropping up about how it can cause cancer. Kids are playing on that. That's a scary thing when you think about trying to get rid of. Anyway, what I was getting back to is the money that they paid out for the cash for grass. If they put that rebate money to agriculture and gave the farmers ways to reduce with smart irrigation controllers and all the technology, they would have saved a minimum 30 times that of what they tried with the homeowners.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic when you talk water efficiency. And I'd be remiss if I didn't kind of at least throw it out there that I do have a perception of my own. When you talk in the water industry, there's really three big drivers of water use. There's the environment, so we want to make sure that our trees and our fish and our the natural environment maintains health. We have agriculture, and the economic drivers associated with that in the state of California are huge.
Mm-hmm. And there's state senators who want to get rid of farming in California, which...
Well, yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons. It is a system.
Right.
But agriculture is a large user of water, and in many ways uses more water than the urban environments, mm-hmm. and the urban being the cities. There's 450-odd urban water systems in the state of California. Those collective systems, depending what report you read, use in the 20 to 30% of the water range of all the water that's used in the state of California. But we focused in droughts over the years on that urban environment, one, because it's easy, mm-hmm. two, because it's very measurable. We started requiring water meters back in, I think it was the 70s across the state of California. What you can measure, you can manage.
Absolutely.
And it's where you get the most visual and some might say savings from waste. So for example,
it's low-hanging fruit.
It's the low-hanging fruit. It's easy to change a toilet. You don't have to think about it once you change the toilet. It's easy to change out your turf in some ways. It's very visual. You can see that change.
Right.
But when you look at urban environment, agriculture, they each have unique challenges in how then you save water. And so for many years, we've dealt with droughts and efficiency in that urban area. It was easy. It was low-hanging fruit. It was no-brainers. Initially, we started with efficiency indoors. Mm-hmm. You make one change of a device. You never have to think about it. You continue saving water. In the last drought in the 90s, we started to make a shift to landscape. We really saw that come about in the 2000s and 2010.
Yeah, got all the Enwilo and
we got Enwilo. We've got the irrigation controlling technologies that have really improved. The sprinkler head nozzles.
For our listeners, you and I know what Enwilo is. Can you?
The Mono Water Landscape Ordinance.
Yes.
Right, and it's really the regulations that control. When you change out landscaping, what's the appropriate percentage of plant material, what type of plants, what are their watering needs, and really looking at having a more sustainable landscape that's appropriate for that area. But when you look at that, we're now shifting, even in the urban, to a focus on landscape and landscaping yards. But as an industry, as a water industry, we're just now at the state level beginning to look beyond urban and to really look at ag and to look at what the water savings is there. In a similar way, my role with American Water Works Association for the last 3 years has been really as a focused driver of water loss control and water efficiency of the distribution system itself. It's an area that we had historically not thought of, honestly, for water savings. Mm-hmm. But when you look at a water distribution system, the water supply system itself, it leaks, it weeps. It has times when pipes burst, just like in your home when you have an irrigation system device that fails. We have that on the pipes that serve customers. And so even in California in 2015, we started a real focused effort to educate water systems on water loss control, how to first calculate the volume of water you're losing, and then how to look at what the low-hanging fruit is in your system. Do you need to improve your metering? Do you need to actually meter all of your own uses at your headquarters office, for example, or at your city park? Fire flow, how much do we use for that? Are there ways that when we flush our system for water quality, we can recirculate that water back into the system rather than letting it run into the storm drain? Right. So we're starting to look at water loss within the system itself, and again, looking at it as a new opportunity for water savings instead of continuing to hit the customer level.
So where do you think, we've been through the drought, where is water efficiency going in the future, both for urban and for everything else?
Agriculture and environment, everything else. So I think the California Water Plan says it best, that we really need to look at water use in a whole different way. We need to look at what the regulations are with water transfers, how we move water from where it naturally occurs as snowpack and melts into the rivers, how long we store it due to climate shift. The storage periods are shifting. The wets are wetter and the dries are drier. So we need to look at those rules on how we control water around the state. Right now, there's a huge shift going on with who controls and who has the final say for water efficiency. Is it the local level? Because we always thought it was historically, that as long as me and my water system had water.
Well, that goes back to the big question I hear all the time: who owns the water?
Yeah, who owns the water? And it's very different. My agency, for example, when we first got into the drought in the 2009, 2010, our agency's perspective was we have very efficient customers already. Our water is not the cheapest in town. And based on our water rates, that has encouraged our customers to be efficient. We did our water planning out multiple years and determined we had sufficient water to get us through. And so we had a very different perspective in how we communicated with our customers. Use the water you need, don't waste it. And if you use what you need and no more, we're going to get through this together. Then the state came in and said, well, everybody needs to save. Even if you have sufficient water, you mentioned that earlier, even if you have sufficient water, you need to save a certain percentage. Right. We're all in this together. Even though the pipes may not deliver that water to you, you need to save. And that changed and shifted the whole arena of water efficiency.
And the message.
And the messaging.
That moved away from conserve, because that sounded like you were forcing them, and talking now about using water more efficiently. I think that's important.
Exactly, and it's a shift of short-term to long-term. When we're in the drought, we need customers to conserve and do those short-term actions that are going to help conserve, save that water. When we're not in a drought and there is sufficient water supply, we need customers to be efficient, not wasteful, right. Because many water systems rely on the sale of that water in order to fund the infrastructure improvements that are needed. And where are we headed? Just like I mentioned, we went from local kind of control and communication with customers to a more statewide, right. The state saying across the whole state, we need to be efficient, we need to meet certain measures. What we're now seeing is a much more highly regulated community in the water efficiency realm. And there's 2 specific state laws that are moving forward now. The governor back in 2016-17 declared, a new kind of ethic of water efficiency in the state of California. And the rules associated with that are still being rolled out. And so as a water industry, each agency is having to learn what our water bucket is, for lack of a better word, what our objectives are. And those objectives of what the total usage we're able to do are still being set. So the state's looking at water loss in the system. How much does that distribution system lose? You take that amount of water, you add it to the amount of water that is a calculated volume for indoor water use, 55 gallons per person per day. Right. You add that to a amount of water that's appropriate for outdoor irrigation, that's calculated based on some flyovers and landscape area measurements. You add all that together, and that's the amount of water your agency should be able to stay within. Yep. And then at some point, there will be rules about commercial, industrial, and institutional use as well.
The problem that I see, like in the Amuelo, I'm also on the board of the Building Industry Association, and I sit on the committee for the National Association of Home Builders for the Green Building Standards. And we talked about water efficiency. That's the committee that I'm on. I've been to the sessions with the water agencies and everybody, and talking about the Amuelo. The problem that I see is how do you manage that? And the reason I'm saying, just like for LEED and all this, so you go out and you do all the things that you're supposed to do. It says, you got to put your spray heads 18 inches away from the, all of that, all those rules. And you have to do a water budget. You have to do all the calculations. That's all fine and good. But I find that after that's achieved and you go down the road, it goes away. There was a water, I'll just give you a brief thing. There was a water agency, and I won't mention who because we like them, but they did a study on smart irrigation controllers. They picked a bunch of homes in one area, and they said, hey, we're going to give you high efficient nozzles, we're going to give you a smart controller. They didn't give them soil moisture sensor or anything like that. So they went and they did an audit. They did the catch can. They saw broken or tilted sprinkler heads, broken pipes, all of that stuff. They supposedly fixed it. Then they programmed the controller and they went away. And a couple weeks before the presentation, this was going to be at the Southern Nevada Water Smart Innovations deal, they sent out, I got a copy of the report. And it says smart controllers didn't work. It was pretty bad. So I called a guy up who did from the water agency. Hey, can I ask you some technical questions? He said, sure. I said, so you did all this stuff at the beginning. I said, so how do you know it wasted water? Oh, we looked at their water bills. Okay. Did you go back out to the home and see if any broken pipes or anything was distribution uniformity changed? No. Did you see if they changed the controller program? No. Well, a lot of people who don't know anything about smart controllers, it gets put in and say they water every day or every other day for 10 minutes, and they notice the day that they normally water, hey, honey, it ain't watering today. I got to go out and go fix it. So they'll go out and they'll touch the buttons and change all this stuff. I said, so did you go back and look at any of that? No. So now you're going to make a report talking about all these companies, that all the products that you used, that it didn't work, it was a miserable failure, but is it really due to the equipment or is it due to the people? Same thing with Willow. Who's going to, once it's achieved, when you put it in, what happens afterwards? Who's going to enforce that? Just like Beverly Hills during the drought. There's people, I don't know if you know a lady named Debbie Fagoni, okay, and I've known her for a long time, and I went with her in some places. There's a home that had 7 pools. Yeah. Now, let me tell you, this guy had a lot of money who owned this gigantic 7 swimming pools. And his point was, I have lots of money. If you want to charge me 3 times the amount, no problem, I'll write you a check. But I want my 7 pools. What do you do?
Yeah. And you've just described the unsustainability, in my mind, of where we're headed. Yeah. In order to elicit change, it really has to be at a personal level, or it has to be a device that truly has absolute control. And by absolute control, I mean when you change out a toilet to a 3.5 gallon ULFT, and you maybe did that 10, 15 years ago, you don't have to think about that. It's until that toilet gets changed, it will, even on its worst day, it's not going to be any more than 4 gallons per flush. Now, it may leak, and there may be some loss there, but pretty much it's a no-brainer once it's changed out. You get into other areas, though, specifically landscape, and now you're talking about behavior, and you're talking about sustainability, and you're talking about landscapes that maybe got changed out with one homeowner. A new homeowner comes and decides, well, I don't like that red plant. I want this green plant.
Look at the HOAs that hire these big landscape companies. What's the first thing they want to do for their customer? Make sure the curb appeal is lush and looks good. So I'm going to crank the water up some more.
Absolutely. And so it's, when you get to behavior, in my way of looking at it, that requires a different communication. It requires a different mechanism for sustainability. And it requires a much more personal level. And I think we're moving as an industry in that direction, getting, at least in California, folks who live here a little bit more aware of water, a little bit more aware of the communities that they live in. Part of that's done through peer pressure.
But I also think the schools, and from elementary schools and high schools and junior high, those are working good. One last thing. So I'm sure in your career you may have experienced, either yourself or somebody else, when the water agencies are telling people to save water, and then you have a pipe that bursts. And then the homeowners say to you, not you personally, but, hey, why don't you manage your product better, because you're the one causing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of gallons of water to run down the street, and you're complaining because I used a little bit more water on my grass. How is that conversation? Is that I don't know if you've experienced that yourself or you know anybody who has. That's got to be a tough.
You know, I have experienced that, because one of the hats I wear is risk manager. So when we have a pipe that bursts, either because of age or because of, a pressure differential or anything, and we're out there and there's water flowing, it's a hard conversation with customers. But it's one that I think is honesty always wins. To be able to say, yes, we're doing the best that we can to make sure that pipes don't burst. However, when they do, we want to make sure our response times are quick, that our repairs are appropriate, that our valves are maintained enough to where we can isolate that.
Because you can't automatically just turn one thing off.
No, and you can't turn it off quick, or you have pressure that radiates through the pipes and cause more problems. And so the communication is, you're right, there are times when things break, in the best of times. But to the extent that we can operate the valves to isolate that area, get a crew out there quickly to appropriately elicit a repair, and get you back in water and keep that loss to a minimum, that's what we want to do. And the only way we can do that is through capital improvement programs, infrastructure improvement programs, and really making sure that the maintenance is done and that the pipes are able to have an extended life. And sometimes that means replacing them, and there's cost to that.
No, understand. Well, Sue, I appreciate you coming on the Water Zone today, and I envy you in a way because you do things that I don't know a whole bunch about. I mean, I know a lot about what you do, but I mean, in centuries, but you get to get your hands more dirty in the back end of things behind the scenes than I see.
Oh, it's an enjoyable job. I absolutely love it.
Great. Well, that's all for the show. That was great. Sue Moss is an awesome lady. She knows what she's doing. Anyway, everybody, remember to join us next week. It's our Act Show, and we got some pretty awesome guests. So remember, the most important thing to do is
think blue.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you
Talk
next
to
week.
you next week.
Bye-bye.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
NBC News Radio special report, Tropical Storm Michael. At least 6 deaths are being blamed on Hurricane Michael. 4 of those casualties were confirmed in Florida's Gadsden County, not far from where the Category 4 storm made landfall. Meanwhile, officials in North Carolina and Georgia each confirmed a death in their states. One victim was an 11-year-old killed near Lake Seminole. Florida Governor Rick Scott is getting a first-hand look at the devastation. At an afternoon briefing, Scott said the worst damage he saw was in Mexico Beach and nearby Panama City. However, he also detailed the devastation in Bristol and Chipley.
What you see at Chipley and Bristol is it sort of looks like there was tornadoes. So you just see spots where everything was down, and you see it's like a tornado went through.
The governor said more than 1,000 people are involved in search and rescue operations today. The storm is moving through North Carolina at 24 miles per hour. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now, here's a new concept: digital network advertising, where businesses display your ad inside their building. If a picture's worth 1,000 words,